Hey, welcome to this quick video about a very minimalist plein air setup for oils or acrylics. This is just a preview of the painting that I'm going to be completing. Today I am in New Mexico and I started my morning driving along the beautiful Rio Grande. As you see here, I actually did stop and do a painting at the Rio Grande, but I filmed that with my GoPro, so I don't have access to that footage just yet. But I have just been in awe of all the colors. It is late November, and I'm in northern New Mexico, and it's just been beautiful. Hey, I'm here at the San Francisco Mission Church. It is somewhere around Taos. I think that this is the church that Georgia O'Keeffe painted, and I think she painted it from behind. That's what it looks like to me. I'm gonna do the same thing. I think that the light pattern is kind of interesting. It's going to be a very abstract and very quick painting because I have other places to be today. And in this video, I really want to show you a very minimal, stealthy plein air painting setup. And I think that this is great for beginners, whether your reason for being very minimal is, because you don't want to invest in a lot of equipment like a pashot box right away. Pashot boxes are very expensive. Or you just want to be a little bit more stealthy and you don't want to draw a lot of attention to yourself. So let me show you a good setup for a beginner plein air painter. And again, this is the San Francisco Mission Church. This is from behind. Maybe on my way out I'll show you the front. It's a pretty cool building. And I just want to do a really quick kind of abstract painting just to kind of show this interesting light and shadow pattern. But let me go ahead and show you this very stealthy plein air painting setup that is great for oil painting or acrylic. I do have an equivalent way of doing it in like watercolor and gouache. I just don't have that stuff with me today, so I'll do another video on that sometime. Okay, so here is my very minimal and stealthy plein air setup for oils. This would also work for acrylic painting. First and foremost, my plein air painting pocket guide. It's a must. It has tabbed chapters, and it's not just about like the technique of plein air painting, but it's about strategy. It's about, where to go, how to do it, and kind of the mindset that you need. So, shameless plug right there. This is available on Amazon, Plein Air Painting Pocket Guide by R.M.Broadwell, Rocky Nook Publishing. Very proud of this, okay? Check it out. It's cheap and it is available. Okay, first things first, sketchbook. I think a sketchbook is essential because you can do a quick 5-minute sketch and really work out a lot of the issues that you're going to encounter in the painting process. I recommend keeping it very simple, so I've got a sketchbook and then I'm just using marker basically to do these quick little compositions. It really helps. All right, so now this is kind of the secret. You don't need a pashot box, okay? A pashot box is great. I love my pashot box. I have some pashot boxes currently for sale in my Etsy shop, so I'm not anti-pashot box, but I am pro plein air painting and doing it however you need to do it. So this is just a small palette. It's like 7 inches by 11 inches basically, or I guess it's 8 inches because I know this is an 8-inch panel. So I've got my pre-toned panel here, some clips, and I just clipped this right onto my palette. And then I was out painting this morning, so I'm only going to use 3 colors plus white and plus my alkyd medium. Alkyd medium just helps your oil paints to dry faster. And then I have Indian yellow, Indian red, turquoise. That's all I'm going to use for this painting. And then white. This is an alkyd white. Griffin is the alkyd line by Winsor & Newton. So it already has alkyd mixed in with it. This is liquid impasto, so it's an alkyd medium. that's very thick. And when I do palette knife paintings like I'm going to be doing today, I like to keep my paint really thick, and I'm only going to be painting with a palette knife. So this is it. This is all you need. A few colors. A medium is not necessary. I'm only using it because I am out on a trip and I'm traveling. I need my paintings to dry somewhat fast. And then sketchbook, a marker, a pencil, whatever you have, just a scrap piece of paper, nothing fancy. When you get stuck or need some inspiration, you need a planar painting pocket guide, of course, and that's it. And I will just sit here and I will just hold this in my hands and I will paint. And I was already out painting this morning, so I'm actually just going to reuse these colors from my palette earlier. So as I said, I'm going to use Indian yellow. That's a lot. That is a lot of Indian yellow. And then I'm going to use Indian red. So I'm just scraping these off of my other palette. Paper towel, also good to have. The great thing about doing your paintings with just a palette knife is that it's so easy to clean. Then I'm going to get some of the white here, and then I'm going to have to squeeze out some more turquoise because I ran out of it this morning apparently. And I probably need some more white as well. Just a little bit of that. Definitely going to need some more white for this painting. And then my liquid over here. And then I will just do all my mixing down here. And when I'm done, I'll scrape it with my palette knife and wipe all that excess paint into my paper towel, and then I will just be on my way. So this should just be a quick little painting session. When I made this video earlier today, I originally planned to do all the filming with my GoPro, but the angle wasn't working with that setup that I had. And so I did end up just filming with my phone, which is why I'm able to go ahead and just post this video without having to transfer files off my GoPro, blah, 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 blah. But I did record my sketch with just my GoPro and not my camera. So I just wanted to show you the sketch that I came up with for this painting. This is probably the closest thing to an actual no-tan sketch that I've done on this whole trip. You can see other sketches I use a lot of hatching. So I just loved that light and shadow pattern, and I really wanted to capture it. And fortunately, even though it was morning and the sun was rising pretty fast, that light and shadow pattern was pretty consistent throughout the whole process. I did end up with the painting, I had a little triangle of light that appeared right here on this protrusion that comes out of the back of the building. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure I showed my sketch, because I did make a point on this trip to always do a sketch before my paintings, and it really helped me a lot. We're coming into the process here just a few strokes into the painting, and that's because I've been filming all of these videos with just my GoPro, which is mounted to my chest. And for this setup, being that it's completely flat and not bent like a pashot box would be, the angle just didn't work for the camera that was mounted to my chest. So that's why I decided to switch over to my phone, and I was able to get a pretty decent top-down angle of this painting. And so I realized that a couple of strokes into the painting, so obviously you didn't miss too much. And what I'm doing here is I am locking in my lights. Okay, now I am oil painting, and if you're an oil painter, you may have heard the rule that you have to start with your darks. but you do not. And when I am plein air painting, I really just, you know, I don't want to say that I just do whatever I want, but it's the truth. I kind of just start with whatever is grabbing me first. And in this case, it really worked out well for me to start out with those lights, because one thing I've noticed, especially on this trip, I was having a hard time really getting vibrant light values. I was saving them for last, and for some reason, they were just not as vibrant as I wanted them to be. So in this painting, this is probably my favorite painting so far. And I attribute that to the nice, vibrant lights that I was able to get. Now, for the shadows, I really got off to a strong start because there's not a ton of contrast in this adobe church. So I really like that I was able to kind of get a little bit darker value, but it starts out very, very warm. You'll see later in the painting, I kind of go overboard on my cool neutrals in the shadows. And so, you know, self-critique, if there's anything I could change, it would be I wouldn't go so deep into the cool temperatures in the depths of these shadows. So as I said in the sketch, what I'm really trying to capture in this painting is this interesting light and shadow pattern. And one way to make this a little bit more interesting, because it's such a basic design, is to use color shifts. So I'm going to do that both in the shadows and in the lights. You can see that in the shadows, I start out with a very warm neutral that I have taken the value down just maybe 2 notches. Again, I'm using only Indian yellow, Indian red, and turquoise. This is not a very conventional palette, but it's one that I have been really enjoying for my plein air paintings for about the last year. I've really gotten to know these colors. Indian yellow is a very strong pigment. Indian red is a very strong pigment. And turquoise, being a phthalo, is a very strong pigment. So every time I need to shift the color in these shadows, I am only adding a little bit of another color. So you can see here I've got more turquoise in the mix. It's really I would still call it fairly warm overall. Relatively speaking, it's cool because we're comparing it to all these other warm neutrals. But I decided that as I move away from the light and get further into the shadows, I wanted the shadows to really cool down. And I really like the abstract, large form of the shadows. And I think that later on when I get into this painting and I'm adding more cool shadows in here to define some of the edges, that's where I wish that I had kind of held back a little bit, because I actually really think that this is a strong composition if I were to just leave the shadow area a little bit more flat. And now I'm going to start blocking in the sky a little bit, and then this composition is really going to start coming together. So my sky right now is just titanium white and then turquoise. Turquoise makes a great sky color. It's almost too vibrant. But again, this painting is all about abstraction. It's all about light and shadow. It's all about shape. And so I wasn't really worried about capturing the natural colors. I would have toned down the sky a little bit if I was, but I really felt like the turquoise really played into the contrast because the light pattern is very much a yellow-orange. And so that's a great complement to the blue-green of turquoise. Here I am using my palette knife just to help define the edges of the building. Definitely no soft edges here. I'm leaving it very sharp, using the blade of my knife to help me get those nice crisp lines. And palette knife is so great for that. I find that doing soft edges with the palette knife is pretty difficult. You end up just kind of pushing the paint around, and the best way to handle soft edges with the palette knife is just to mix a value or a color that's in between the edges that you're wanting to soften, instead of trying to actually use the palette knife to maneuver the paint around. That's just my personal opinion. And I really like that there was just a sliver of sky on either side of the building. And I really did try to go for a sense of symmetry here, where really the only asymmetry in this composition is that light pattern. Otherwise, it's a very symmetrical composition, and I just love it. I actually might do this painting in a larger form because I enjoyed that so much. And as I said in the intro, I do believe, and I probably should have looked this up before I started recording the video, but I'm quite certain that Georgia O'Keeffe painted this same church, and she also painted it from behind the building. She painted more of the protrusion that's coming out of the building, which I will end up indicating that just a little bit in this composition, because as I look up, I'm going to notice that the sun is shifted a little bit and is shining on that protrusion just a little bit. It just created like this little triangle of light on that protrusion. And I just thought that that actually made it look even more interesting than my original idea. So I did go ahead and do that. But I would say that plein air painting, a great strategy is to just go ahead and lock in your light and shadow pattern. Either do that at the very beginning, or sometimes, for example, if I want to paint at sunset and I know that the light and shadow pattern that I'm going to want to capture is going to come later, I will actually block in all of just the basic elements of the composition, and then I'll actually wait to get that light and shadow pattern. But in this case, I liked the light and shadow pattern that I saw initially, and so I wanted to really lock that in, and I just make one small adjustment as the sun moves and creates a little triangle of light on that protrusion. But you can see, hopefully you see that this setup is very convenient. I am just sitting on a ledge and I have this in my lap. So there's no need for a tripod. In fact, I really prefer not to paint with a tripod. I find that, first of all, it's just more equipment to carry around, and I usually have a tripod for my camera anyway. And so it's just something that I don't want to lug around. And I really just feel so good and comfortable sitting on my tush when I do art. And I think that's because growing up as a kid, I was always drawing, and I didn't have anything. You know, I think I had a desk when I was a little kid, but for most of my childhood, I didn't even have a desk. So I would just sit on the floor of my bedroom and draw and paint all night long. I would stay up just drawing and painting until, you know, I couldn't do it anymore. And so that for me is just my comfort zone. And I don't know. I feel great sitting down. So I know that some people are going to prefer standing up. And this setup does work standing up, but you would probably have to use a smaller palette and a smaller panel, I think, because it would be difficult to balance this 8x8 inch panel and the 8x11 inch palette while standing. And I would basically have to be holding it right where that left clip is, and it would just be a little awkward. So this is a great setup, but I think that it kind of necessitates you sitting down. Here you can see I am going into those shadows, and it just, you know, in person it looked great, honestly, but I can see in the video that it's looking just a little bit dingy, and I've lost that really nice big shape in the shadow. So again, that's my biggest self-critique with this, and I think it's important always to, you know, self-critique. In plein air paintings, there's always going to be something that you'll look back and, you know, wish that you had addressed it differently, but you're making so many decisions in the moment you know, you kind of have to just give yourself some grace. And I'm going to add a little bit of color shifts into the light as well. I debated on doing this because I think that typically I want to do the color shifting either in the shadow or in the light. But because this is such a basic composition, I felt like playing around with color shifting in both the shadow and the light. So here is just a little bit more of a neutralized yellow that I'm using. And you can see I keep the value consistent. So the amount of light it is, you know, whatever you want to rate that on the value scale. I don't really think in that term, but I am trying to keep the value the same while shifting the temperature of the color. So this is actually a little bit cooler than that initial orange that I applied. This is a yellow, and then it has a little bit of red, a little bit of turquoise in it. And here you can see I'm adding that little spot, that little triangle hitting the protrusion of the church. It just adds a little to the asymmetry of this very symmetrical composition. And at this point, the painting is essentially done. There's just not a whole lot going on in this painting other than the shapes, the light and shadow, and the color temperature shifts throughout. And you might notice that this video it's a full-length video. I didn't cut anything out, and I didn't speed it up a lot, but I sped it up just a little bit. And I think that's mostly just because, especially while I'm painting, I'm very self-conscious about how much mixing I'm doing on my palette. And I'm a little self-conscious about how interesting that is. So I figured I would speed it up just slightly so that we would spend a little bit less time watching me just play around on my palette with mixing my colors. But overall, I think that it is informative and it's important. And this setup really lends itself to me being able to show you how I mix colors. The way that I mix colors, whether I'm doing oil painting or watercolor, it's sort of the same. I kind of start out with one color and then I just sort of constantly shift it around throughout the painting process. So you can see on the left side, there are a few mixes that I've kind of just set to the side to reserve. But otherwise, I'm working from one pile and I'm just constantly adding color to it to change the color temperature, to change the value. So I'm either adding white to make it lighter, I'm adding turquoise to make it a darker value. And that's just my strategy for mixing. I do employ other strategies for mixing. Especially like if I'm in my studio, I might pre-mix some colors. But when I'm plein air painting, this is really kind of just how I do it. I start with one pile and then I just shift it around. I don't have, I don't start every single color from scratch, basically. And I think that is efficient. It makes the process a little bit faster once you really get to know your palette and the strength of your pigments. You'll know just kind of intuitively how to shift around your color as you go. And I find that I waste a lot less paint when I do that. And I also think that it helps to make the painting more cohesive because in almost every part of the painting, there's every color. The exception in this case being the sky. That's the only area where there's only turquoise and white, but even in the light areas where it's very vibrant, there's a little bit of turquoise in there just to tone it down a little tiny bit. So I really enjoy doing my mixing that way. And when you have a small palette like this, it also is important that you use the space wisely. So different strokes for different folks, but that is my plein air strategy for mixing color. And I also will go and reuse piles. So piles that I set off to the side of my palette, that doesn't mean that I'm done with them. I might use them later on throughout the painting to neutralize or to kind of bring some elements together, especially when I'm doing paintings where there's a lot of atmosphere. I'm going to keep some sky color on hand to help me create a sense of atmosphere in distant landforms. So I hope that makes sense to you. Let me know what you think, and let me know if this kind of video is helpful to you. I know that I've mostly stuck to watercolor painting on my YouTube channel, but I would like to do, you know, I do a lot of stuff. I do the watercolor, I do oil painting, and I do a lot of sketching, and I'm sure I do some other mediums that, you know, I'm not even thinking about. I mean, I love doing ink and charcoal. I love just doing pencil, marker, whatever, you know. And I don't know, like, should I keep my channel just, you know, medium specific? I don't think so. I don't think so. I'm asking rhetorically. I want to do everything because I love everything and I don't want to keep it all separate. So right now I'm just kind of looking at this painting, judging to see if there's anything else that I want to shift around. You can see I am mixing up a color here. And what am I going to do with it? I think that I'm just going to, it's a shadow color. But quite frankly, I'm just fidgeting at this point. The painting is done. And again, if I could go back and do it all over, I would really take out a lot of those cool shadows that you see that are defining the wall, the two walls where they meet right in the middle. It's just too much. I think that I would have made that much subtler, and I wouldn't have applied so much paint right there. And now I'm just redefining some of the edges, adding a little bit. In the video, you really can't see this color shift, but I'm just shifting the color a little bit more in the shadows. Here I am toning down some of that overly cool shadow area. I wish I would have done more. But, you know, here's the finished piece, the grand reveal, and ta-da! I think it looks pretty good. What do you guys think? Shameless plug for my book, and here's the painting again. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Please let me know. I would love to hear what you think. Did you like this? Was it helpful? Was it informative? And now, as promised, I'm just doing a quick drive around this beautiful church. This is the San Francisco Catholic Mission Church, and this is just south of Taos. I spent the day in Taos today, and this was a stop that I planned, and it was probably my favorite painting of the day. I did 3 paintings today, and the other ones are just meh. Okay. This one I really enjoyed, and I'm glad that I ended up using my phone so that I could go ahead and get a video out without having to, you know, mess with my GoPro and the micro SD card and editing on my computer, stuff that I do not enjoy. I should just do all my videos with my phone. Honestly, it's pretty good. So, thank you guys. Subscribe maybe if you like this, and I'll catch you later.